Hey YouTube, today's video is a subscriber request. It is a video on the QImage1 software that I use to print, and it is about how to make a canvas. So somebody was having some troubles, and there's a couple kind of weird things about creating a canvas and the edge on this software. So I'm gonna show you how I do it. And maybe if QImage1 sees this video and they can clarify a couple of the things that are kind of confusing, and we can go from there. But I use this software every day to print canvases, and I'm going to show you how I do it. Let's go in. All right, y'all, here we are on my Mac in QImage1. First thing we're going to do is we're going to select our printer. I'm using a Canon Pro 6100. I'm going to be using my Decor polyester canvas. The next thing is our media size. Okay. Now, this is something that is important for me to explain in us figuring out what size our canvas is going to be and what size roll we're going to print on. So you have to calculate how much extra canvas you need for the edges and to simply use to grab onto to stretch the canvas. Now, when I am printing a canvas for 1.5" stretcher bars, I add 6 inches to the total dimension. 3.5 of that is my edging. So that's going to be what you see on the sides of the canvas. And another 2.5 is the blank white canvas on the back that I simply use to grab onto. So today we're going to set up to print a 16x24 canvas. And to do that, my finished canvas size, since it's going to be on 1.5" stretcher bars, is going to be 16 plus 6, 22, and 24 plus 6, 30. So it's going to be 22 by 30, which means I'm going to use a 24-inch roll of canvas. Now for 3/4 stretcher bars, I do 5 inches, 2 extra inches of edge, and 3 extra inches of blank white for stretching. And that's 1 inch of edge on each side, of course. And with the 1.5", it's 1.75 inches of extra canvas on each side. I don't want to do 1.5 inches of edging if I'm using 1.5" bars, because it just means you have to be too exact and there's a slight chance some white's going to show. So I give it that extra 1/4 inch. Okay, so I know I'm going to use a 24-inch roll of canvas, right? So now in QImage1, I'm going to use a 24-inch roll. That's my custom width right there. That's the width of your roll. Now for the length, I need 30 inches, right? So I have my piece of paper ready. Now I'm going to go over to the prints tab. Okay, so we're doing a 16x24, right? Here's our image. It's in 2x3, so 16x24. If I click that, it's going to put a 16x24 on our piece of paper, but we do not want to do that because we are going to use QImage1 to do the edging. So for this image, I like to do a mirrored edge. Most of my canvases get a mirrored edge. So we're going to go down to this borders area and we're going to select canvas mirror. Now, for some reason, you can't select outer. To me, logically, the canvas border is the outer edge, but inner is the only thing you can select. So I'm going to put 1.75, so that's per side, canvas mirror, and then I click 16x24, and it gives me that mirrored edge, giving me a total of 3.5 extra inches of print. Okay, now obviously it's not centered, and I would need to tweak that by going to my 1.25" each side, and that's where I would be with this little bit of extra canvas that I would cut off. Now, the confusing thing is, let's say we want a black edge. And this is where the person who requested this video got confused, and this is why it's very confusing to me. So for a solid color, you do have to go outer. So if I want the same thing, but I want that edge solid color, I need to go 1.75 solid color. This is where you select your color. Let's say green. And now if I hit 16x24, so this is giving me the same size canvas, the same size total printed ink area that I am getting when I use an inner border for mirrored. And that's confusing to me. For me, logic would say it's all an outer border, and the blank white that I want to grab onto would just be this blank canvas around my image. But for some reason, it does not work that way. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to my canvas mirror. Canvas stretch, it just kind of stretches it out, and I don't really like the way it looks, so I do not use that. So canvas mirror, 1.75, 16 by 24. Going to go over 1.25 inches from the side and from the top, because that's that extra canvas I want to grab onto. Okay, now this is ready, but we have one more thing that we need to do. So we're not going over any of this stuff. We get down here to canvas shrink adjustment. Now you're printing onto fabric, okay? So when you print really long prints, it shrinks, and you are going to end up with a dimension that is smaller than you wanted. Generally, if it's like 12 by 18 or smaller, I do not turn on the shrink adjustment, and I'm always just fine. But I do build my frames custom to each print. So I'm able to print it, and I'm able to double check that it came out as I needed before I do anything else. Now you can use the calculator as this little calculator right here, where you enter a length that you specified, what you actually got, and it will tell you the stretch needed. Now, in the past, if I print like an 8-foot print, 96 inch, I end up with like 95.5 inches of ink. And that tells me that it's like a 0.5 stretch adjustment. When I've done that in the past, it was way too long. So if it's over a 12 by 18 canvas, I add 0.2. Now, I printed a 40 by 60 yesterday, and my image was a 1/4 inch long. So this is not exact, and it changes based on what canvas you use. So my polyester canvas does not shrink as much. Yeah, a customer isn't going to care if it's 1/8 of an inch short or a 1/4 of an inch short. The only time it really matters is if you're putting it in like a float frame or something like that. So you really need those to be exact. So my advice is, if you're doing that, is to practice with some different canvases, do some prints where you're not using a float frame, enter some different numbers, do some calculations, see what you get, and figure out what works best for the canvases that you use. But in my case, 0.2 is great. After my print yesterday, if I'm going to print another like a 60-inch print, then I might change that to 0.1 and just see what happens, since 0.2 left me with about an extra 1/4 inch, I think. But because this is a 16 by 24, 0.2 is plenty. It's maybe going to make it like a 1/16 of an inch long. Because I added that canvas stretch length, QImage 1 is warning me. So what I may end up with is a little bit less of this white, and that is totally fine. If you were going to do a big print where you're expecting that it might have a bit extra, go ahead and go back here and add like a 1/2 inch to the length of your blank canvas. And then you're just going to have an extra 1/2 inch of canvas right there, but it's going to make sure that your software doesn't have any problems. But for something like a 16 by 24, we can stick at 30 inches, and that will be just fine. And from there, we're going to click print. It's going to warn us about the 0.2. We're going to click yes. It's going to open our print drive. We click print, and we are good to go. Okay, well, I hope that makes sense and helps you to print a canvas using QImage 1. Thank you for watching. If it did help, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.